another edition of Buc What You Heard. I'm joined today by my very special guest, Peter Blake. And Peter, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and tell them about your radio show on Saturdays.
Yeah, it's on WTAN 1340 AM. It's called The Sports Web. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. Saturday afternoons on WTAN 1340 AM from 4 to 5.
Yes, and I can tell you right now what a difference a week makes.
Yes.
We go back to the game on the Washington Redskins game that just ripped the hearts out of so many Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans, and here we are celebrating a win that practically nobody thought the Bucs were going to get, including myself. I mean, I've just watched the way this secondary is played, and you've heard me make comments about the secondary, and you know what? At the end of the day, when it was game time, they came back and they were money. So my hat's off to that defense. Quan Alexander, awesome game. It was inspiring to watch him play, and that's the kind of fire we need on the defensive side. And that's what I hope that this leads up to moving forward. I hope that all the other players can rally around this kind of fire, around this kind of wanting to play and get after it, and mistake-free football, and let's get some more wins.
Yeah, put things in perspective, Gene. Quan Alexander's brother, he lost his brother, I believe it was 24 hours, and he goes out there, and not only is it hard enough to be a rookie in the NFL, but to deal with the loss of your brother and the play like you did, 11 tackles, forced fumble, would have had another interception if not for a damn penalty. I mean, he was lights out on Sunday. I think another performance that really stuck out to me, and his numbers won't show it, but Jameis Winston not turning over the ball once again, and the key 3 third-down conversions in overtime to keep drives alive. This kid is really starting to come of age.
One rushing touchdown, one passing touchdown. Yeah. He was playing. Cameron Brake came through, and I was very happy to see that as well. And to kind of touch on what you're talking about, we look at where Jameis Winston was week one, and everybody had their questions about him, and he's done what we thought he would do. He's continually progressed, continually gotten better, cut down on the mistakes, all the things that these people were telling him that he needed to do. Yeah. And what is it, 3 games straight, no mistakes?
Yeah.
Or no turnovers?
No turnovers, no interceptions, no fumbles. He's played mistake-free football. It really looks like he's coming to his own. And you think about it, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, people talk about the doom and gloom, and I'm one of those people. But there are a lot of good things about this team and the 2 players that we just spoke about, Quan Alexander being a rookie on the defensive side of the ball, and now Jameis Winston on the offensive side of the ball. Another thing that I thought was interesting was Lovie Smith going for it on 4th down. Some people didn't like this. I liked it. I think it was.
I love it.
From last week. It's a catch-22, honestly, Gene, because if he doesn't go for it and he leaves it up to his defense, then Lovie's being conservative again. If he does go for it and doesn't make it, Lovie just tried to cost him his job because he's coaching with emotion. I like the decision to go for it. What I didn't like was the play. I think they could have done a quarterback sneak. But hindsight is 20/20. To go for it, I think really right now Lovie is trying to buy into the fact of depending on his offense, believing in his offense, and basically he's also telling you that he doesn't believe his defense could have stopped the Falcons, which they did not. So it really didn't matter. 80 yards or 38 yards, it really doesn't matter. He went for it. He was trying to win the game. He didn't get it, but I like the attitude and I like the focus on the play.
You're 100% right. I'm right there with you, because if we've looked at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' body of work this season, it's kind of hard to lean on that defense to pull out a game-winning series, 3 and out. It's just hard to, it's hard to put your faith in that, based on how they've been playing. I know we've mentioned some players here and there, but as a whole, I just saw a lot of the same thing. Players playing out of position. Chris Canty, had he stayed in his position and not bid on the pump fake at the end of the game, this wouldn't have gone into overtime. Just simple plays like that. And you know what? Neither one of us are NFL players, but there's a discipline. There's a certain discipline that you have to have if you're going to be successful in the NFL. And if your job is to play this position, play in this is your lane right here. This is where your assignment. Then that's what you need to do. You need to let your person underneath you or your players, you need to trust that they're going to actually play like they're supposed to.
Yeah, once again, I mean, Jonathan Banks, he's playing out of position. You mentioned Chris Conti. Levante David at times is not getting back in coverage. The Tampa 2, we grew up on the Tampa 2, okay? I watched it. We watched Warren Sapp. We watched Derek Brooks. We watched John Lynch run this type of defense. And I think in some terms we're spoiled, but we know how this defense works. And right now it's not working. When you blow a 17-point lead, albeit they come up with the final stop, I want to know, is Gerald McCoy fully healthy? Because it doesn't seem like he is. He has made no impact at all. I get it. He's getting double and triple teamed. Your defensive ends had to come up. McCoy makes a play at the end of the game. But where is Gerald McCoy this year? It doesn't seem like he's just the same player at this point.
Right.
I don't know if it's the press getting on him. I don't know if it's the injury. I don't know if it's the fact that nobody on this defensive line scares anybody besides maybe Jaquez Smith. But even so, I've watched tape of McCoy not getting double and triple team. He's not able to beat a one-on-one matchup. I'm just wondering, is he 100%?
You know, I was watching him, and I'm not gonna be a critic to Gerald McCoy because I've had an injury with my shoulder, and you can barely lift your arm. You can only lift your arm so high, and he's playing. You know, he's basically playing with one arm. I mean, from what I can see, I watched how he played. I watched his technique, and it's not the same. It's not the same. Prior to the injury, you saw a different Gerald McCoy, a higher motor, and I think he's playing to protect that injury, but still try to get after the quarterback. And that's kind of what I saw. I could be wrong. You know, I'm not sure what they have going on, but from what I saw, it looked like, you know, this guy is not playing at 100%. The fact that he's on the field, the fact that he's making plays, he made that play at the end of the game, you know, I'm happy for the win. And right now we're 2-1 in our division, and you know, we've got a better record than we did last season. I kind of tempered my expectations going into the season because I saw where we needed a lot of work in different positions. Prior to that, I was like, we could get 10 wins. But as I've kind of tempered my expectations, I like what I'm seeing because they're continually improving. And you look at another team that was parallel to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You look at the Tennessee Titans and where they are. They haven't learned. They have not learned their lesson.
They fired their coach.
Four coaches in 6 years is not building a foundation to a winning organization. All the fire Lovey people, keep your eyes on Tennessee, because what you're asking for is what you're going to get. You've got a rookie quarterback who is learning the system in the NFL, learning to play under center, learning to make those throws, learning the speed of the game. And the fact that he's been injured 2 games, it takes away from his ability. Not to get away from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but there's a parallel. Both of these teams, 2-win teams from last season. Both teams are. And you look at what Tampa has gone through, that catastrophic loss and people calling for Lovey's job. And I promise you, with what Jason Light and Lovey Smith are doing right now, is building. They're building through the draft. As far as I'm concerned, they've had 2 successful draft seasons with the players that they've brought in that have been able to make considerable contributions. And we can even go back to the GM that I won't name and bringing in Levante David and Doug Martin. Right. So the Buccaneers are slowly but surely building that foundation to be able to have your core on offense and defense, and this way you can kind of build through the draft. And if there's that one special player in free agency, you can bring that special player in and plug and play into a already working offense and defense. So I like what I'm seeing. A lot of our fan base out there, they don't have the patience for it right now because the Buccaneers have been losing for so long. and they haven't been patient enough to let a coach see what he can do to build up. But here we are with Lovie Smith. We've invested in the quarterback of the future. You have to let this play out. And despite if the Buccaneers don't win any more games the rest of the season, we can be upset. Yes, as a fan base, we can. But he has to be able to put in that system. You look at Ron Rivera, a prime example. I keep going back to Ron Rivera. They wanted to run Ron Rivera out of town his second season. Nobody in Carolina was happy with what he did. But you look at Carolina now. And two seasons in a row going to the playoffs, and it looks like this may happen again for him. And you know what it is? Stability. Stability in the general manager, stability in the head coach, and you haven't had that coaching carousel. They've gotten rid of some players, and they are winning with a not too pretty offense. They've got guys that I kind of wonder. I look at Ted Ginn, and I look at what is the other the old man winner.
You got Philly Brown, and you got
and the thing is, they're winning. They're winning as a team. They're winning with running. Cam Newton is an athlete, and that's what you want. You build with your quarterback. You build around that. You have a solid defense, and look at them now. They're 7-0.
My thing is the expectations for this team were high. I thought they could be a 10-win team, and the most disappointing thing about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year is they should actually be 5-2, because if you have a kicker versus the Houston Texans, you most likely win that game. If you have a kicker versus the Carolina Panthers, it may change the complexion of that game. The Washington Redskins game was a winnable game. So to me, tempering your expectations, I expected this team to be good from the get-go. The thing that's the most disappointing about it, besides the record, is the fact that the defense, which was coming off a second year after they had such a disastrous year, played well the last of the year. You thought that that would carry over into the next year, and it just hasn't. That's the most disappointing thing. You hire a defensive coach. He's calling his own plays. He's calling his defense. He has his guys. Look, he's 5-18. Okay, I'm not saying fire him right now, but stats show right now you got to start winning. You have to start putting a winning product on the field. They go into Atlanta. That's a great step, but your defense has to improve, because if you're a defensive-minded coach and your defense is giving up 24 points, 17 points every game when your offense puts you in position to win, then I don't know why you're hired in the first place. Your specialty.
Well, I have to go back to personnel. I realize coach is coach. Well, but let me say this. Let me say this right here, and we'll go back to when Raheem Morris came to Tampa.
Right.
And you look at Raheem Morris up until Lovie Smith, and the only two decent defensive backs that Tampa has had to speak of is Aqib Talib and Darrelle Revis. For the longest time, we had an E.J. Biggers. We had Leonard Johnson. We had all these guys playing at this position, and the Bucs were doing nothing over this period of time to shore up this position. The secondary is in shambles, and that's because they haven't done anything with it. They've basically plugged players in, serviceable players, but they've never gone out to get the playmakers, the Josh Normans.
You had a Darrelle Revis who made $16 million, and I get it. You may have not wanted to pay Revis the $16 million, but there's a reason why a player is paid that much, because he's great at his position, okay? Now, you tried to sell us on the fact that Werner was going to be a better replacement. You tried to sell us on the fact that Michael Johnson and Evan Smith and all these players that you got in free agency, and unfortunately right now it doesn't look good. When you say that you didn't have the player personnel, you didn't have this, you didn't have that, who had the final say on it? That's Lovie Smith. So right now, this is a crossroads, because if he does well, which I expect him to do, I expect this team to do well throughout the year and hopefully turn this record around, and you give him a third year, which I think the Buccaneers will do, he is going to be under a major microscope here, because they're going to have to, he's going to have to go into free agency. He's going to have to pick the right players if he wants to, because he's going to have final say. He's going to have to go into the draft. If they draft defense, he's going to have to get players that are coming here right away and produce, and there's going to be no excuse. Or the Glazers and Jason Light have to sit down with him and maybe take a little bit of power away and put some people around him that can help him out, because you can't continue to go into free agency and miss. I mean, you missed this year on Bruce Carter. Quan Alexander is the starting middle linebacker. Bruce Carter was brought in here to be the middle linebacker. He's not. So I'm not going to give him a pass here. He's 5-18. He's the second worst Buccaneer coach in history, okay? But was it a bad situation that he came into? Absolutely. But he's had total control over the players that he wanted to go and get. And to me, it started out with Darrelle Revis. I hated the move. Darrelle Revis is one of the best corners in the NFL. I don't care if he's making $16 million. There's a reason why. People said, well, Revis is not going to fit in the cover 2 system. Make him fit. That's what coaching is all about. You make a player fit into your system. You don't say, well, since this player can't fit in my system, I got to get rid of him. That is the mistake of most coaches in the NFL. You want to know why a lot of quarterbacks are not developed right now, like an RG3 or a Colin Kaepernick? Because their systems are not fitting them. They're not doing everything to make those players comfortable in the system, and that's why those quarterbacks are struggling. And it goes back to my argument with Darrelle Revis. If he doesn't fit in the Tampa 2, make him fit in the Tampa 2, but don't sell me a bill of goods that Werner is going to be as good as Revis or Michael Johnson or even Anthony Collins. I mean, those are 3 big free agents that are basically non-existent on this Buc team. I'm sorry. I'm just putting it right out there. It may seem negative, but look, I'm telling the truth here.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I guess I see things differently than you do. I think that, you know, what happened with that secondary has been a long time coming. Eventually this was going to happen. Yeah, I agree with you. I thought Werner would be a nice fit here in Tampa, and it makes me wonder if it was the system that made him look good, or if it was his ability, or I'm not sure quite what's going on with him, because I expected a lot more out of him, and we just haven't seen it.
Right.
So, you know,
you talk about Chris Conte. Chris Conte is a Lovie Smith player. You talk about Tim Jennings. Tim Jennings is a Lovie Smith player, and we have to.
And what I will say, Chris Conte has played pretty solid since he's been in. There have been a few mistakes here and there, right, but you can look at the whole. You can go down the whole defense and say the same thing.
And that's, I guess, right there. This is on Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith is calling the plays. He's making this defense in his image. He's running the Tampa 2. I would be ahead of the defense, and it's not.
Yeah, but what I've seen is not the play calling; it's the execution of the play calling.
Right.
He has to. Yeah, I mean, Lovie can't go out there and run those plays, and Lovie can't make those guys. Can't be out there to make those guys stay in your position, stay in your assignments.
Right.
It all comes down to getting the ideal players. Right. And I think with the availability, as I look back through free agency, I haven't seen a lot of impact players other than a Revis. Mm-hmm. But I just haven't seen a lot of impact players that I didn't think, man, maybe he could have come here and made a difference. There are a few, but by and large, you know, you just didn't see a whole lot of them. Who is the safety for the Saints? Came in and got injured, and he's never really made an impact since he's been in New Orleans. I can't think of his name.
What are you talking about?
Well, that's it. Yeah, case in point. Came in, big money free agent, and hasn't been able to do anything because of injuries. Just, you know, it's a luck of the draw. You hope that the player you bring in is going to fit in your system. I only know of a couple of coaches right now, active coaches, that could bring a player in and he's going to fit into their system and he's going to be successful, and that's Bill Belichick.
Right.
You know,
I kind of look around the league and I'm disappointed because you have a Dan Quinn who's done a lot of good things in his first year with the Atlanta Falcons. What's the difference between the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Not much of a difference. In fact, I think talent-wise, they're pretty even. You saw that on Sunday.
Yeah.
You look at Mike Zimmer for the Minnesota Vikings. He's done some good things. He also had a rookie quarterback. He had a 7-9 record last year. I mean, for me, I think we're kind of giving Lovie Smith a pass. Okay, I'm not trying to be too hard on him, but I'm just pointing out the fact of when people say, well, he doesn't have the players, he doesn't have this. Well, who was charged of the players? Who had the final say? That was Lovie Smith. So there's a lot of pressure on him. And I think it was kind of disappointing if you look back of how he's calling this defense. And it seems like every week we have the same thing. I mean, even on Sunday when they blew that 17-point lead, you talked about it. Chris Conte being out of position. The cornerback's not doing it. They don't necessarily have all the talent. I get it. But if you're going to try to call these plays, you got to get the most out of your players, and he's not right now. He's not getting the most out of his plays. And on top of that, you have Gerald McCoy, you have Levante David, who are one's making $100 million, another's making $60 million. What are they doing this year in this defense? And if they're not doing anything in this defense and they're not making plays like Lovie Smith needs them to make, then they need to be coached up to make it. And I get it. I'm pointing a finger at Lovie Smith, but look, we've seen the same thing over and over again. I mean, this team has a penalty situation. They corrected it on Sunday. We'll see what happens versus the Giants. But that's been a problem this year. Players out of position. Just players getting burned defensively. We're not used to this type of thing. This is not what a Tampa 2 defense is all about, and it needs to get corrected. Yeah. And for me, the philosophy of this team, to me, Gene, was we're going to get a rookie quarterback. We're going to depend on the running game and take the pressure off the rookie quarterback. Well, you've done that. The offensive line has improved. On top of that, we're going to depend on our defense to win us some games. Well, that has not happened. That's been the most disappointing thing.
Well, I tell you what, teams win as a team. What Tampa did, they did as a team. The offense in overtime went out and did what they had to do. The defense came alive, sort of, and did what they had to do. Right. Now, moving forward, let's hope that they can build off of that. For me, all I'm looking for is improvement this season. Next season, I have higher expectations, right? Because that's 2 seasons that you have your core players in the same system defensively. Right. Offensively, you saw how the offense has responded with Dirk Cotter coming in, and he's made a big difference. So I do know that they're headed in the right direction. I looked at what they've done with the draft. The last 2 drafts have been majority offensive players. Majority. Now I look at this last draft, they picked one, and if people look at Quan Alexander now, if you could have gone back, he wouldn't have made it. He wouldn't have lasted as far as he did into the draft. So I think that they're headed in the right direction. They made good moves. They got the best players on the board that they could get, and I honestly do believe you're going to see more improvement, especially out of the defense next season. That's my expectations. Right now, I mean, look at this schedule. Think about this schedule here. You've got the Giants, who have a losing record. You have Dallas, who has a losing record. You have the Eagles, who are finally coming around. Those are all winnable games. The Colts, we watched the Colts and we saw how they played. And I honestly do believe that the way their defense is right now, I really do believe that's another winnable game. The Falcons, we know the Falcons, they're division rivals. That's a toss-up. There's no telling who can win that game. The Saints, another winnable game. Yeah. And, the Bears and the Panthers are all winnable games.
You could say the same thing about their first games in the season when the Titans.
Oh, absolutely. But what I'm saying is now that we've gotten past the bye week and we got that horrible game out of our system, let's just sit back and watch and see if the defense starts to improve. We have an idea what to expect from the offense now with the offensive line kind of gelling. Barring any injuries, I think that this offensive line can protect Jameis Winston and keep him upright. And with the running game, they're opening up holes. Right. And we're seeing Charles Sims and Doug Martin do what they need to do. Wasn't a pretty game on Sunday, but they won. Yep. And those are the games that are important to win.
I agree.
The games, those down and dirty, gut-wrenching games, those are the games you have to win right there. Right. Now here we are. we're moving into the NFC East portion of our schedule, the meat of it. So we're going to really see what this team is made of. I don't expect them to run the table, but I will say this: we are 2-1 in our division, which is a good start. And barring those turnovers that we had against Carolina, that may have been a different game. Connor Barth is kicking lights out, so we've got the pieces in place now. And if we can just get the defense, the secondary on board, and keep from making those costly turnovers and get more 3-and-outs on the field, I think we're in a position to win a lot of these games, or at least be in these games.
Yeah, you mentioned the Giants on Sunday. That's definitely a winnable game because that team is up and down, and they also have a terrible secondary. This is a team that gave up 7 touchdowns to Drew Brees. In fairness, though, Eli Manning comes back and throws 6 touchdowns. So hopefully this Buccaneer defense is tightened up. But Jameis Winston has an opportunity to really have a big game here, even without Vincent Jackson. Hopefully you get your tight end back. Hopefully he's healthy. Mike Evans will be targeted a lot. Somebody else is going to have to step up. But definitely it's a winnable game, and you have to start winning games at Raymond James Stadium, okay? You won one game when you're tender. You got to start winning games, and it starts on Sunday. And there's a great opportunity there.
Yep, and Cameron Brate is a guy. I haven't heard his name mentioned a lot. He had some very key plays in that win against Atlanta as well. And, I hope that they can implement him in the offense as well. I really like what I've seen from him. I would like to see him block a little bit more, but I'm very happy with what I've seen so far. What he's done in the preseason has translated into this time of the year. Right. So, hopefully that all comes together and we start to see a lot more. I love the offense. I love what the offense is doing right now. Yeah. And let's just hope that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can look at this game and say, hey, we can do better. We can improve. And I'm hoping that that's what we see in Raymond James Stadium on Sunday.
I agree.
So your takeaways for the game on Sunday, what are your thoughts on the game after watching that incredible historic game between the dreaded New Orleans Saints and the New York Giants? That was the most incredible game. I'm a football fan. I love football. I love my Bucs. Right. Love them to death. But I tell you what, that game was amazing. One end to the other end. Drew Brees just threw. It was unbelievable.
Both teams refused to play defense that day. That's what I got out of it. This was the NFL's baby on TV. This is what the NFL wanted to see. They don't want defense. They want 2 quarterbacks lighting it up. And Odell Beckham, what can you say about him? 3 touchdowns. Drew Brees, 7 touchdowns. He's throwing to Brandon Cooks. He's throwing to Ben Watson. He's throwing to even Marquise Colston, C.J. Spiller. They got a dynamic offense. And remember, this was a team that the Buccaneers beat in the Saints, who just beat the Giants. So you would think that the Buccaneers will be ready for this Giants team. But I don't know who has a worse secondary. Is it the Giants or is it the Bucs? So there could be a lot of points in this game. It could be a shootout. And it may have to be a shootout, Gene, because, again, your defense has shown that they can't really stop anybody. And if you have a big lead, they're most likely going to give it up. You hope they don't. You hope they get some of this stuff corrected. So I look at this matchup right now, and I'm like, well, it could go either way. It could go in the Bucs' favor, or maybe it doesn't go in the Bucs' favor. But I believe on Sunday the Buccaneers will be ready to go, and I think they'll have a good game versus the New York Giants. So what are my thoughts on the Saints and Giants game? Unbelievable, and both defenses refused to play defense that day.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Doug Martin plays an integral part in this, because that's going to keep Eli Manning off the field. The more we can run the ball, the more we can chew up the clock. Charles Sims, sprinkle in some Charles Sims, maybe some play action here and there. Maybe see Jameis Winston roll out and run for a first down or something. That fake pitch was just classic, man.
A lot better than Charles Sims play, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So it just plays like that. It makes you excited about seeing the offense, and I haven't said that for years.
Sure.
but not since 2010 when Josh Freeman was running all over the field. So what I'm seeing right now is the offensive coordinator. And the one thing I will say about Lovie Smith, he has learned his lesson in Chicago, allowing the offensive coordinator to make those plays, to make those play calls, and do what he needs to do to win the game. So to me, that's part of it. Let's get that defense on board, and you're going to see a different Buccaneers team. And like I said, we talked about this. I don't have very high expectations right now, but I'm pleasantly surprised when the defense is able to do what they do. But next season, it's going to be a different story where I'll have higher expectations, and rightly so, because you're into your third season with this team. Everybody should be ready to go. Despite who you're bringing in, your core players should be ready to go, and everybody else should be plug and play. Let's go win some games.
I'm still holding on hope that this team will do what I said they were going to do the first of the year, have 10 wins, but I don't know. But look, if they have 8, 9, even 7 wins, I think that's a pretty successful season. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Doubling. Right now, they're 1 win away from doubling what they did last season. And yeah. I know that there is no such thing as moral victories, but to me, it's improvement from last season. One last point that I like to make, and this is kind of how I reflect on the games at times. I look at that team last season and the direction that offense was going, and I look at this team this season and the games that we've played, the games that we've won are games that I don't think that team last year with either quarterback would have won. So to me, I'm happy with. I guess I'm excited about where we are and where we're going. And like I said, I just want to see that defense improve more to really go along with what the offense is trying to do.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. They could be 5-2, and we could be talking something totally different about this team.
Oh, absolutely. But, win, lose, or draw, you're a Bucs fan for life. You know me. I've always got the gear on,
and in there.
And despite what's happening right now, I think that they are going to turn it around.
Yeah.
A lot of people dislike the ownership, but I think the ownership is doing what ownership is supposed to do. You bring in that coach, you bring in that general manager that you think are going to help you win it all, and you let them do their thing. You don't get involved. And, we'll probably never know what happened with Ken Whisenhunt. When he was here in Arizona, I always thought he was a good coach. I just didn't think that he had the right quarterback. And to me, a season, what is it, 2 seasons is in 1.5 seasons is not long. Yeah. Is not long enough to get a team implemented, considering all the coaching turnover and all the player turnover that you've had over the years. So that's just my 2 cents on it. And I'm hoping that our ownership can give Lovie a chance to build up the defense. We got the offense. We got them where we're wanting to get them now. Let's work on that defense and get that defense where it needs to be as well.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Any last thoughts from you? Let's tell everybody how they can catch up with your show and how they can catch you on Twitter.
Yeah, catch me on Twitter at pblake1003 or again on WTAN 1340 AM, the Sports Web. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. Saturday afternoons from 4 to 5, we talk all Buccaneer football. We talk about the NFL. We talk with longtime Lakeland Ledger writer Rick Brown. So it's a lot of things to cover on Saturday afternoons, and the only way we can do it is if there's some fan support there, because it is a fan show. So we like to hear from the fans on Saturday afternoons.
And any of my listeners, please check this show out. This show is great. Sean the Sports Don and Peter Blake, they do a great job. They work well together. It is the best sports talk radio show in the Bay Area right now, hands down. You can listen to the other stations if you want to, but 4 o'clock on Saturdays, let's check this guy out.
Sounds good.
All right. And with that being said, let's go Bucs. Let's get a win over the Giants. And that's it for me. Peter, thank you once again for being able to join me. Hey, this was awesome. Thank you.
I love it.
All right, everybody. Peace.